Hello, and welcome to the Sacred Sister Podcast, where we normalize the magic
and sacralize the mundane. My name is Britt.
And I'm Hannah.
And oh my holy goodness, friends. We are so excited to talk about this, to talk about the ugly side of spirituality. Hannah, what's it going to look like?
Yes. So originally we thought about talking about yoga, and then things happened in our lives and we're like, nope, this is what really needs to be talked about at this point. This is really what is calling us the ugly side of spirituality, which is this imbalance when we focus too much on the light or too much on the darkness. And so when we focus too much on the light, that is spiritual bypass. So we're going to be talking about what is spiritual bypass, how does that look like in our lives, and how can we heal that within ourselves. And that's where shadow work comes in. So we're going to be touching on shadow work. What's that about? How can we use that? And then we're also going to touch on what happens if we're too focused on the darkness, so too focused on the drama in our lives, and how can we heal that through light work. So that's going to be the whole theme.
This is going to be a doozy, and I just want to say, if anyone is getting triggered in this moment, listening to this and being like, I don't need that, you might need it the most. Because this, I feel like in the introduction right now, just letting all of you know who maybe, sometimes it's really hard, usually, especially at the beginning of this spiritual awakening, living a spiritual life, a conscious life. It's hard to look at the things about ourselves that maybe we don't want to focus on a ton. And the whole thing that I want to say is that all of us at one time or another have or do, in varying degrees, contribute to something that is adding a lot of imbalance to the world.
Yeah. We're all imbalanced, just like in yoga. Like, none of us has ever held a pose without falling over at some point in their lives. Like,
nor should you.
Like, it's just part of life. Like, it's just, that's the whole thing.
Some days it's your best friend, and other days it's nowhere to be found, and it never should be looked at as anything else than a practice, as something to show up to, not something to perform, not something to attain so that it's yours and you're not going to share it with anybody. Anyways, whatever.
Life is a practice. We're here to play.
And that we are women that are not afraid of triggers, as far as actually what I want to say is one of the greatest reasons that Hannah and I are such good friends is because we trigger each other all the time.
Yeah.
And this is how, we've said it in previous episodes too, this is how you know that you have a really valuable friendship on your hands, because you're able to sit with each other and not cast each other out or cast each other aside whenever you bump against each other. Instead, you can stand back and say, ooh, we bumping. What's the bump about? What's going on here? Yes. And then with so much love and compassion, just like envelop one another and help each other grow.
Yeah, yes. It's this beautiful balance between blessings and triggers. Because again, if you just have a relationship with just triggers, then that's no fun either. That's abusive. So, we wanted to say, like, a beautiful balance within the relationships. If your relationship has just blessings all the time,
it's probably not that strong. And
it's not that strong. It's a little superficial. I mean, with who do you always have good times and always blessings coming at
it's
all?
Like very surface, like watering the leaves and not watering the roots.
Yeah. So this is where we're going to be really diving into this episode. And since this is going to be quite a bit to talk about, we're going to also have like a tiny meditation this time. So we're not going to go too deeply into that.
And then we'll have an action guide at the end.
Yes. Your action guide at the end. And then also it's last quarter in Gemini, last quarter moon.
0 degrees, right at my sun sign, 0 degrees, Taurus and Gemini.
Yeah.
Right at the cusp.
What is
last quarter? Can you talk about that? How do people work with it? What does it look like?
Yeah, so the last quarter, I like to call the harvest moon. So this is basically the time where the new moon is where we plant the seeds, first quarter is when we're sprouting, full moon is when we're blossoming, and then the last quarter is when we receive the fruit of our work that we have done. This is where we receive the results. So in some ways there could be an actual physical result of what is happening in your life, like something that you've wanting to bring into your life and now you have it, or which is equally beautiful. It's like a mental result in a sense of a resolution of a problem, or like in emotional, just like an understanding, a deeper understanding of why the things happened the way they had to happen throughout this moon cycle. And just really, this is a good time to really sit and reflect, and allow yourself to look back onto the past 3 weeks and see what has happened since new moon in Leo. How all this stuff affect me, and what did I learn throughout this moon cycle? So yeah, and then you're basically releasing all these things that is just no longer needed. Any like shame or blame or guilt or feelings of, well, I don't deserve this, whatever it is, allowing that to look into that, doing the shadow work, which we're going to be touching on in this episode. And then you're ready for the next new moon coming up next week.
Exactly.
Ta-da.
Beautiful. That whole time you were describing, I was picturing this like new moon being the ground zero, the baseline, the inside, the darkness, and then getting ready, going up. You've got your challenger moon coming up, even more, full moon, the peak energy of the good or the negative, and then this is the wave back down. This is like coming down the hill.
Yeah.
And getting ready to rest up and get ready for a brand new cycle.
Yes.
Constant evolution. Beautiful. Thank you for that.
So now let's do a little meditation. Let's just come into the space where we allow ourselves to just ground into the moment.
Oh, sacred sister, a kindred flame, may we light one another. From the ashes rise, oh, we rise, oh, again.
Really simply take a deep breath in and sigh it out. Letting go of the day, letting go, and just allowing yourself to be present in this moment. And have a deep breath in and out. And one more time, deep breath in. And sigh it out. And now just sit with yourself. Just take this time to just sit with what is. Just notice maybe any tensions or any little pains within your body, any sensations that you may feel, and just allow them to be. No judgment. Just allow it to be right here in this moment. Just allow yourself to rest, closing your eyes, listen. And now imagine that each sensation, each noise that you hear, each taste that you feel in your mouth, any emotions that may come or thoughts, are all part of a big symphony. You're not trying to push away anything or pull anything towards you, and you just allow yourself to be in this space and listen to that music. Listen to that symphony of your life. And you know that each part of that symphony has its place, has its meaning. And each part of what is happening right now in this present moment is exactly what it's meant to be. It is what it is. And this allowance of everything that is surrounding you right now, just allowing it to be the way it is, and allowing yourself to be the way you are, without trying to fix anything or trying to make something happen. This allowance helps you to feel this unconditional love for yourself and for life, this acceptance of what is, this appreciation, just the acknowledgement of anything, the light and the dark, the blessings and the triggers, the good feelings and the pains. All of it are part of the beautiful symphony of life. And one without the other wouldn't be life. Just feel this embrace for another moment. Just sinking into this moment, accepting it for what it is, accepting yourself for where you are right now. You're exactly where you're meant to be. Let's take another deep breath in together. Stretch yourself and out. You roll your head gently. Stretch out your arms. Another deep breath in and out. Beautiful. Whenever you're ready, just allow yourself to come back and open your eyes.
Thank you. Thank you. There's so much fire inside me during this season as well. And it was perfect because for a long time in the meditation, I was like ready to come out. It's like, let's go. And then just like, you know, with every new inhalation, just allowing myself to settle deeper and deeper and saying, this is the medicine of this moment. But then you saying, wherever it is that you are right now is exactly where you were meant to be. Recently, I got a new deck, the Animal Medicine cards deck, and it's been beautiful how this synchronistic unfolding has happened with the natural cycle of going into Leo season, seeing all of these confrontations coming into my realm where I can either sink into my watery depths and let things roll off my back and give the forgiveness and, you know, all of that watery stuff. Or the cards that have popped out for me in this deck, my first two have been the Badger, which keyword is aggression, and the Wild Boar, which keyword is confrontation. And naturally inside of me, sometimes I let things pass by really easily, letting it flow. Yeah. But then sometimes it's also like, no, I'm sorry. This needs to be talked about.
Yes.
And it doesn't make me some, you know, unpleasant or negative being for coming in with something that's outside of love and light land.
Yes.
Which is exactly what we're talking about today.
This is why we're going to be talking about this.
We were like, we can't do yoga this time.
Yoga's got to wait a little bit. But
it'll be there.
Yeah, it will be there. And this is really the medicine of the meditation too, to just accepting what is, accepting ourselves for who we are, you know, accepting the light and the shadow. And because a lot of times, just like you said, in the spiritual community, we want to be so focused on being this ideal of who we think we should be, and then we detach ourselves from our humanness.
We're so obsessed with the highest self.
Yes, the higher self, that we forget our inner child and our inner deepest self and our deepest being. And they are both part of ourselves.
Yeah.
And when we just focus on this God and goddess part that is within us, and that is absolutely beautiful and amazing to focus on, we forget the human part.
Exactly. And we live too much in the sky, in the air, in the ideas, in the dreams, in the manifestations, in the abundance, in the light.
Yeah.
And it makes it hard to relate to a lot of what's going on Earth.
Yeah. And we detach from it. And we can't even really help others, because we cannot connect with them on that human level.
Yeah, I think one of the most beautiful pieces of medicine for anyone who's looking to inhabit that spiritual element in their day-to-day life is being able to meet people where they're at. And that means those who are less woke.
Yeah. As hard as it is sometimes.
Yeah, as hard as it is.
Yeah.
And
this is the medicine. Yeah. Seeing it as a medicine too. Seeing it like, ooh, okay, it's not the other person. This is actually for me to step up more, or this is a challenge for myself.
Because if you think about it, when you're not able to meet someone where they're at and have love and compassion and understanding of where it is that they are, what you're actually doing is sending a message to them that makes them not even want to dip toes in anything that you're involved in, which is not what we're trying to do. Obviously, we want to be beautiful examples a lot of the time. And we can't just be beautiful examples in our own social circles. We need to be able to be that person, that loving person that all of us want to envision ourselves as, to everybody.
Including ourselves.
And this is the work.
And sometimes love says no. And sometimes love is angry. You know, like anger and all these like emotions that we think are negative. They also have their space.
And power.
And power, oh yeah. And I mean, we're so, and that was part of myself, my own story too. Like for the longest time, I didn't allow myself to feel anger or to be angry, because I felt it like it's something negative. I don't even know where it came from, but I just felt like a lot of guilt and shame around being angry. And interestingly enough, I attracted people that openly were angry. So this is what we also going to be touching on in this episode, is a lot of times when we trying to detach from one aspect of ourselves, we're pushing it away, and through that pushing it away, we're actually attracting people that have the other side of the imbalance.
Because we haven't taken the cue yet.
Yeah.
Because we haven't wanted to look at it yet. We've been resisting it, and the way the universe works is a circle. So when you're pushing things away from yourself, it's just going to come right back around. I love that visual. Hannah gave a talk last Saturday that I attended, and she had this whiteboard, and she put that circle on there, and she was like, yeah, it's just going to keep coming back until you want to acknowledge it. There are tools that we can utilize, which we're going to be talking about today in the shadow work aspect. So this is what's going to happen.
This is what's
basically
a
20-minute intro. Longest intro yet. Okay, so yeah, speaking of too much light, what is that? What does that look like? What is too much light?
Yeah, so you would think like, oh my gosh, light and love is the best. Why would anything ever be bad if I was too much in the light? But one of the things that thing is called when we are just focused on the love and light part is actually spiritual bypass. And you may have heard that before. And you may have not, but it's called spiritual bypass, and that is when we don't want to acknowledge any negative feelings within ourselves or negative actions within ourselves or with other people, and so we just focus on the positive part at all times to an extreme.
Or even bypassing responsibility.
Yes.
Is what I think of too.
Yeah.
Bypassing acknowledgement, bypassing responsibility.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, if you don't even consider them a mistake, it's not necessarily bypassing a mistake because they think that they're in the right. Which is the mental gymnastics part. Man, we are such intelligent beings. Our minds are so powerful. We can convince ourselves of anything.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So what we want to look at today is, what does spiritual bypass look like? And we're going to be, the next question to that is like, in what areas can it affect my life? And essentially it is all of the areas, all the things. So today we'll look at the self, the partnership, the family, the community, and government and politics. Ooh, cringe, epic cringe. I know that on a spiritual podcast especially, nobody wants to hear the words government or politics because it's such a toxic, usually perceived as such a toxic realm. And I will say right now that I went and spent time with Marianne Williamson, one of the presidential candidates, who is our people. She is our people, spiritual people. And it was basically a 1 hour, pretty much Sunday message on spiritual bypass. So we're going to be touching on that too.
Yes. So how does it look like? How does spiritual bypass look like?
Man. Okay, so with the self, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is triggers that come up within other people. So what this is, the ways that we can gain awareness on what a trigger is what are the things that annoy you in life? What are the things that annoy you about other people, especially? Like, what do people do that you witness or you hear about or you see happen, and you're just like, ooh, this burning upset. That's like, oh, I just can't believe they would do something like that.
Yeah.
And really a lot of the medicine behind that work is seeing this as almost a fragmented piece of your own self. The way that I like to think about this is, and I have been doing a lot of research about this as well, and Teal Swan describes this in a really beautiful way. If you don't know about Teal Swan, she's a really incredible spiritual teacher too.
Yeah, she's amazing.
So basically, when we're growing up within our family structure, our family has certain perceptions, perspectives, and belief systems that they have grown to encapsulate from their own lives. Usually they will instill these on us, and a lot of the ways that they can impact us within the first 8 years of our lives is the right and wrong, the good and bad.
Yeah.
And when we express ourselves as children growing up, when we express ourselves in a way that is the bad and is the wrong, we are chastised or shamed or punished for it. And then we say, oh no, I'm not loved and accepted whenever I am expressing myself in this way, so I need to not do that in order to be loved and liked. And in those moments, we fragment ourselves and press them away from ourselves, because essentially as humans, we all want to be loved.
Yeah.
So it's on a subconscious level, this is what those pieces are.
Yeah. And then we're being triggered by other people who are embodying those pieces that we fragmented ourselves.
Because we've pushed them so far away from ourselves that we don't associate ourselves with those things.
Yeah.
And
so we are attracting them back into our lives.
Exactly. This is so fascinating. It's like my favorite part of being a human.
It is fascinating what's going on this soul level and spirit level, that, you know, we often focus on the physical realm and on the mental realm, but what's happening in the emotional and spiritual realm is super fascinating. And a lot of times we're unaware of it. It's in our subconscious. And so this is where this comes in, this work, you know, the spiritual bypass and the shadow work is really looking into that subconscious of like, what's really going on behind the scenes of love and light only, positive vibes only. What does that mean? It means that you are fragmenting yourself from anything that you consider or judge negative. You're pushing that part away from you, which means in turns you're actually attracting more of that back into your life. And then also, when people do come to you to say, hey, this wasn't cool, that action that you did, and they're actually a messenger for you to reflect more onto what has happened, but you just deflect and say like, no, just love and light, and I don't even want to deal with you, you're negative, I'm just pushing you outside of my life because I just want to be surrounded by positive people at all times. Well, then
You're negative and I don't need that in my life.
Yeah, but then you never grow. You don't have you need the other people's triggers in order to find your own, in order to find your own shadows, because we all have them. If we try to detach from them, that's when we're inauthentic. And that's when we're actually not love and light.
Yeah, there's this, and notice this stream of this hyper fixation. It's almost like an addiction to positivity.
Yeah.
And I'm a part of a lot of Facebook groups on Facebook, and a lot of them are spiritual based, conscious based, and a lot of them are people that are in their young 20s or late teens. And they're people that are just coming upon a lot of this work, and they're being fed this message of love and light only, good vibes only, positivity, manifesting abundance, and they're so anxious about stuff because they're like, I can't uphold this. I can't uphold this. How do I do it? What are the tools that all of you need? And then I look in the comment threads and it's like, get more sage, get more crystals, get more meditation in, get more yoga, you know, get rid of the people that are bringing the negativity to your life. And it's like, I'm usually the only one that's coming in like, I have to talk on this.
Yeah.
It's not, you don't need more things to make your life better. Maybe just sitting with the discomfort and seeing like what it is about all that makes you so uncomfortable is where the actual
gift is.
Yeah, the gems are.
Yeah.
It's wild.
And it's also so fascinating when we start allowing ourselves to sit with that discomfort and that pain within ourselves and acknowledge that we made a mistake and see our humanness in it. And that's how we can really deeply connect with others. And I mean, I went through the same thing. I definitely did spiritual bypassing in my life unknowingly, and a lot of us do it unknowingly. It's not like a thing like, oh yeah, I'm spiritually bypassing, I'm super aware of that. Like, no, that happens in our subconscious, and we are innocent in that because ultimately we are trying to do the right thing. But often, I was just thinking that recently, actually my guide was saying that to me. When you try to do the right thing, you're actually doing it wrong. Because you're trying to do the right thing, which means like you're already judging what is right and wrong, and you're trying to change yourself or fix yourself to be someone else, instead of embracing where you at right now, accepting that, and not justifying your actions against other people. That's not what we're talking about, but more just accepting and just being okay with, yes, I have made mistakes and I'm owning them. And the beauty about that is too that you're actually being more loved when you admit to your mistakes than if you don't. That's like a lot. When we make mistakes, we're actually more loved by other people than when we're completely perfect.
Yeah, because and even the idea of perfection is a total facade.
Oh yeah,
those of you who haven't read Brene Brown's The Gifts of Imperfection, holy crow! The first time I read that book, I bought so many copies. I gave it to everybody in my family. I couldn't recommend it more highly because it changed my life as a recovering perfectionist. Any of you out there who feel like you just have to do things right all the time, please do yourself a favor. I've been getting books off of thriftbooks.com, and I've been getting so many books for like $3 and $4.
Awesome.
And I think they do free shipping for orders over $15. Not sponsored. They're not sponsoring this episode.
That's awesome. I'm definitely gonna check those out.
But what I was gonna say, and I love that you touched on that, so thank you for everything that you just expressed, but something to look at is in any given situation when you're not able to meet someone where they're at, when you're like telling them, oh no, it's actually like this, or oh no, you actually aren't right. Instead of opening a deeper dialogue. If you're missing each other, miscommunication is totally fine. It happens all the time. But if you feel like you're not both like really meeting each other at a place, if you're not able to acknowledge like what it is that's going on inside of them, that's something to look at. And then if you don't want to open deeper dialogue and you just want to be like, and that's it, and fiend, done.
Love and light.
Love and light. Go smudge yourself. It's like,
go smudge yourself. That's
like what's really the underpinnings. And as you can tell, I'm super charged in this episode. I've had some serious stuff go down that is not right whatsoever. And I'm really proud of myself for the way that I show up, because I feel like even though, like I was telling Curtis the whole thing that happened, and I'm not going to get into the details on here, but he told me, I don't know why you put yourself out there like this. Like, I understand you communicating to people and really expressing what's going on, but at some point you've just got to pick your battles and just know whenever it's probably, you've done all that you can, and you can't keep beating the dead horse. Because I feel like that's why I like to open dialogue so much, so that in the end, if it's still not accepted, if it's still not acknowledged, then I can hold my hands up and be like, I'm gonna walk away peacefully now, because I did everything that I can. And it's very obvious. Then it becomes very obvious whenever there's just a wall that's up, and it's like, okay. I was trying.
And sometimes we, put that wall up because we want to protect ourselves from looking at our own mistakes, because if we do look at them and our own shadows, all that shit from our past might come back up, all that shame and guilt and those just feelings that before we went on the spiritual journey, those were the feelings that we're trying to get away from. And
you could be thinking like, oh, but I've come so far.
Yeah, like, why am I back here in the darkness again? But it's really, and this is what we're doing with this podcast too, and we've been keep saying that it's all about the balance between the light and dark, between the masculine, which is the light, and the dark, which is the feminine. And with the whole love and light thing, it's a very extreme focus on the masculine. It's an extreme focus on just the outward appearance of yourself, of other people, of problems, just like the outside facade of it. but we want to also look into the feminine aspect of like what's actually going on inside, because your apple from the outside could be super shiny and beautiful, but actually it's GMO and has a bunch of poison in it. So maybe sometimes it's better to get the apple that's maybe not as shiny and beautiful and has some wormholes in it, but you know that's an organic apple grown in the backyard, and it's gonna be so much better tasting.
And you'll share it with the worm.
You're sharing it.
Y'all both deserve to eat good apples.
Yeah, and if you don't see a wormhole in an apple, then it's maybe also a sign like, oh wow, not even the animals would touch that.
Exactly.
So it just shows, you know, the animals know, they feel it immediately, the within. That's like a lot of times we see with dogs and cats too. They immediately know when a person is authentic or inauthentic.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that's really the goal, being authentic. And that's really about embracing that light and the dark.
And
So,
I just want to put this in before we go on to the next subject. Okay. It is natural. It is unsurprising. It's not surprising if this is a new concept or a new stream of thinking or conversation with anyone that's listening right now, because we don't know what we don't know a lot of times. And especially if we're in the earlier phases of this more conscious lifestyle, or, you know, connecting with our own spirit. And it is marketed to us.
Yeah.
I want to let you know, I make the majority of my income as a model, and I do work for people that have, you know, connections with selling spiritual goods, spiritual tools. And sometimes it's a really incredible experience. And then sometimes it's an experience that makes me cringe, because it seems like they're actually trying to feed that fear and feed that imbalance that's like, you need to push away negativity from your life and not associate yourself with any of that mess, and that's why you need this product. Don't worry yourself about any of the woes of your life or the world. Positive vibes only, love and light, good vibes only surround yourself with authenticity, or like only surround yourself with positivity.
Yeah, not authenticity, with positivity.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then like with this product, you're gonna have a great day every day.
Exactly.
And it's like that's imbalanced.
It's
imbalanced to have great days every single day, at all days. Like being in a great moment at all days in your life. That's not gonna make you grow. It's the triggers that keep us growing. It's the same in astrology too, when we have squares and oppositions. Like those are like the challenging aspects, but those are the triggers that
we're meant
keep us growing.
So what another aspect of this conversation before we move on is being fixated on ascension or transcendence.
Yes.
It's like learning all the unknowns, learning all the a lot of people refer to them as the darkness, the things that we don't know, the brand new concepts. And learning and intaking all of that information is super, super exciting. But then the same thing, it can get imbalanced when that's the only thing you're focusing on, because reality is you're on Earth. Reality is you're a human in a human body. You have human interactions, and it can feel very alienating and isolating whenever we just associate ourselves with like the metaphysics of everything.
Yeah.
And then it's hard to want to be living a normal life.
Oh yeah, and I was guilty of that for sure. I had times where I was like, I just wish to live in a cabin in the woods, somewhere else, outside of society, away from it all, and just focusing on meditation and spiritual, beautiful life. But then I also realized, like, this is not actually what I want. Like, yeah, this is where I recharge, but then ultimately I would get bored, honestly. I would be so bored just being outside in the cabin, because I love to also give out the light and also like be involved and do things and see change in the world. And I think that's also what Marianne Williamson was saying. You want to touch on that? Well, you just told me before this episode.
Well, yeah, I thought we were gonna go politics and the government and stuff later, but that was perfect, and I just wrote a note on that. Do the cave reference of Hannah's in this. So I went and spent time with Marianne this morning, as I was saying, and if you haven't looked her up or any of her work, you really, really should. Please do yourself a favor. I'm not saying you should support her or anything like that, but just gaining awareness, and that's what we're going to talk about now. Gaining awareness of what's going on in the world, what's going on in politics, what's going on especially in your own state, your own city, your own nation. Dire importance. This is the whole thing about Hannah, what she just said about wanting to be in the cave. Yes, it can be very alluring to want to, separate ourselves and do our own thing. But in doing that, we're also not making ourselves as accessible to give that selfless service and to enact the change that we want to see in the world. This is the idea that we can't just sit in a cave and meditate all the problems away and envision the grander, greater reality that all of us want to see and want to be a part of, because it's not going to happen unless the people step in.
Yeah.
And this is
the balance, yeah.
This is a huge part of her thinking, and especially, she says, in the spiritual community, since we know the massive benefits of what has changed our lives. Really, a nation is just a collection of individuals. So especially with the individuals that know what it takes to heal their lives, she expects us to be the biggest adults in the room, and stepping out and being able to help others outside of our social circles.
Yeah, because ultimately, I mean, a lot of the stuff where we think that politics are so toxic, and it's a kindergarten in many ways, because like the way that they have lived with their own shadows and did the work and did this inner work, they are not as experienced yet. They're like more like children, a lot of them. And so this is why I love when Marianne says that we're like adults, because we have done the work, we've done more, so now we have a greater responsibility on helping others do the same as well, because they just don't know yet.
So I want to retract a little bit of that, just because it can sound a little patronizing to refer to a lot of the people that are governing our nation as children. But the idea that it's run in such a masculine, power-hungry type of way, very profit-driven, very corporatized. And what she was saying is a lot of the massive shifts, the massive social shifts that have happened because conscious community has stepped in. Not spiritual conscious, just an uprising of consciousness has happened, and people step in. She says it's not just that they said, the higher up said one day, we should just let women vote now. It's about time, right? And it's not like, we should stop separating black and white people because, they've had about enough of that, right? No, the change happens when people say enough is enough. We will be seen, and we are going to rise to this challenge. So all of us can see that we're in this another element of catastrophe kind of things are happening with this current sitting president, and the time is upon us to step in and to act.
Yeah, and I feel like Trump is actually one of the main reasons why Marianne Williamson is probably in the politics so engaged now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of people have come because of Trump. And so this is also the beauty of the whole, darkness that we may see, and where we're trying to detach ourselves. Like, not my president, like, this is all bad, all that stuff. But no, it actually has also a beauty, because it actually triggered a lot of us to step into the political arena. So this is the beauty about triggers. Things that go wrong, things that like, that shouldn't be happening, that shouldn't be the case. Well, it kind of happened because it triggered us, so that we do our actions and we grow.
And a lot of us have been really politically disengaged in the past, and all of that's fine. I know that a lot of people, especially young people, have lost faith in the system, but sitting around being cynical about how terrible and unfair and unjust the country is not going to bring that change that all of us want to envision for ourselves. And even if there is more cheating in votes or anything like that, it's only going to be able to continue for so long. So,
Yeah.
I just want to say that. And yes, thank you for saying that. She did say, Marianne Williamson did say that she wasn't considering running for the presidential seat until this last presidential season came. And basically the whole reason is because we can very obviously see that what Trump is doing is harnessing fear for political purposes, and that is why she feels that she is sent here to bring love for political purposes.
And that's so beautiful, because we usually don't hear the word love in politics, and Marianne Williamson says that.
And for anyone that feels like, oh, that's such a naive statement, how naive to think about love and light. This is why she started getting a lot of like crystal commentary and saging commentary and all of these woo-woo things. She really speaks very plainly on all of that. If you do think that having love in our nation being spoken about is naive,
and because it's
just go do some research.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like love, a lot of times we think love is just, it's almost like love takes everything in. You know, love is just okay with everything, but that's not love. Love is also healthy boundaries. Love is also saying no. Love is also acknowledging the triggers and acknowledging the shadows. That's also love. You know, I think this is also part of the spiritual bypass, when we think as love is just being that love and light, just being the always happy person. Oh, I'm a loving person. I always am happy. I allow everything to happen. I let everyone be the way they are. But it's also, love is also saying no to things. When people treat us and cross our boundaries, love says no. And love stands up. Love is powerful.
Beautiful. So there we go. We've spoken on how does it affect us in self? How does it affect us in government and politics and political engagement? This is I feel like we've already kind of spoken on some relationships. I think specifically it'd be really beneficial to talk about partner relationships and family relationships. What does spiritual bypass look like inside of those things? What do you think of?
One of the things with partnership and families really is when we're trying to detach ourselves from someone that we feel is less spiritually evolved than we are. And we just feel like, I just want someone who's on my level, or, you know, just someone who is also doing the things, who's also spreading only positivity, only love and light, and really focuses all on that. But the thing is that really the deepest relationships, and just as we touched on before, the deepest relationships are the ones that also have triggers. And to have someone who's exactly like you, or who does and agrees with you on every single thing that you do, is actually not a beneficial relationship.
And even now, I'm like, I don't think I would want to be with someone exactly like me.
No.
Not at all. I don't want
that would be boring.
Ultra spiritual dude that, you know, I don't know. I can be a lot sometimes. Yeah, it's definitely something that I'm healing within myself, being in the first years of all this awakening business, especially with my family, I was making our relationship more strained and more uncomfortable and more like hard, because I would go there and I would just have my arms crossed and be so not approving of any decisions they were making, the foods they were eating, the things they were watching, the stuff they were drinking, the things they involved themselves in. And I was just like, wake up. And, you know, I got asked to leave my parents' house a few times because I was coming down on them so hard, and they were crying and I was crying, and it's just, it can be terrible.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? It's like attacking somebody for not being woke.
Yeah. And it doesn't wake them up.
It doesn't wake them up, and it doesn't make them want to do anything that you're doing.
Yeah.
that you say is beneficial to you.
Yeah. And I think it's a very natural process.
Yeah.
Because I went through that too. And I feel like if we're, you know, going on this journey, it's, just like we said with the yoga pose, we're trying out a new pose, especially when you do it one of the first times, we're going to be imbalanced in it. I mean, it's just normal. It takes some time to find the balance, and other times we may have more imbalance again, and it's not like a thing we're gonna find that perfect balance at some point in our lives, and from then on we're gonna be perfectly balanced for the rest of our lives. Like, no. It's okay, because we make mistakes, and those mistakes are triggers for other people, and then we're actually blessings for other people as well through our mistakes. And vice versa.
I think I will say, on another side of that piece, the more and more that you do dedicate yourself to your own inner work, your own self-growth, your own development, gradually, we're not saying that everything is going to be at the magnitude of hardship that it is in the very beginning, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like the first few years, it can be real tough because it's a brand new world. We've never experienced a lot of this stuff before. But as we grow, you know, our own voice within the work, we can kind of see, we have more awareness about what everything looks like.
Yeah.
And even though it's never going to be perfect, I feel like instead of, if it's a wave, the wave looks, you know, super down and then super high and super down, and gradually it's going to get, you know, softer and softer and becoming more toward the midline, so that there aren't such crazy peaks.
Yes. Yes.
So it is worth it. It is beneficial.
Oh,
it does
yeah.
get easier.
Oh, yeah. And it's authentic. That's really what it is. Authenticity over perfectionism. Because also, you know, those waves of feeling high and feeling low, those are authentic. And that was my journey too, because I didn't feel like I should share my lows with other people, because I felt like I should just deal with them with myself, and then what I share with other people are only the highs and the love. But then I didn't realize that's also part of spiritual bypassing, you know, because through that, I actually portrayed myself as someone who doesn't go through shadows.
Someone who's perfect.
And that in turn made other people put me on a pedestal, and almost like makes it hard for me to relate to others. And I wasn't even aware of that, which is like very normal that we're not aware of these things. But it's like, it's just like noticing like, hey, it's not even, I'm not burdening other people by like sharing my shadows and sharing my fears and sharing my challenges with them, but actually I am helping them accepting those shadows and challenges and fears within themselves as well. And
you're helping yourself by connecting with people on a deeper level.
Yes.
By sharing yourself with them fully.
Yes.
I will say this, I was so intimidated by Hannah for the first like year of us hanging out, because I had her on some pedestal, because it seemed like she had it all down. And I was like, but I'm so sloppy. I'm so messy. I have so much stuff going on. And that was one of our first really, really heart-opening conversations with one another. Was, you know, whenever she first shared something with me that I didn't know, some hardship, a challenge that she was going through, and I was like, wow, that's actually great to hear, because I thought that you didn't have any challenges going on.
Yeah, and it was so surprising to me that people would think that, but now I'm like, yeah, of course, because I'm not sharing it. So that creates that imbalance. So realizing it is necessary to share our shadows and vulnerabilities and those hardships. And I love the way that you, Britt, do that in your Instagram stories on a regular basis. I really love that, because it is helping on so many levels.
Thank you. I was just going to say, especially on social media, because this is a place that our entire feed can be filled with these influencers or bloggers or people that seemingly seem very wealthy or very have all the things within spirituality, or have all the things within, you know, some certain lifestyle thing that we follow. And Everyone is going through something that you know nothing about.
Yeah.
This is so important.
Everybody has their shit.
Yeah, even more so than even if you don't really feel like you have a platform necessarily to share your hardships with other people, who are just the people, your closest people. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of people don't share a ton of stuff online. I am a massive communicator. I live to talk to groups through the internet, and it's what works for me. But for a lot of people, you know, it just doesn't work for them.
And that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's perfect. But, you know, just sharing with the people that you love and trust and care for and support, or are supportive of you too. Mm-hmm. That's a helpful thing.
So how can we allow ourselves to embrace those shadows within ourselves and accept them and work through them?
Sitting with them.
Doing the shadow work.
Yeah. Sitting with them. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And shadow work sounds so scary. Mm-hmm. It's, you know, it can have like a weird connotation, almost like a demonic kind of thing with your
dark,
you know, dark forces, and you're working with them. But shadow work is something so innocent, because you're looking at your own fears. And I like to see my fears as little children, especially being a mom. You know, I see with Emma, she's like, mommy, 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 mommy. And she's like bugging me. Like, Shell, look, I want to show you something. And this is kind of like what the triggers are doing, or those fears are doing. They're like bugging us and be like, hey, I wanna teach you this. I want to show you this. And, you know, if we just push them away, they're gonna start a tantrum. They're gonna come out even bigger and stronger, because they want to be seen, they want to be heard. But when we sit with them and we allow them to talk to us and see what's really behind that, if that negative scenario does happen, because we can have so many negative scenarios going on in our brain, in our mind, thinking about, oh my gosh, I can't do this because otherwise this might happen. When we do shadow work in that regard, we can see, why would it be so bad if that happened? So what? Yeah, that happens. So what? And then we go back into like another thing, like, oh, because this and this would happen. And then we ask again, why would that be so bad? And then we go back, okay, because this. Why would that be so bad? Mm-hmm. So we ask ourselves these questions until we get to this core fear. And there are just so many core fears that we all share as humans. We all have the same core fears, and we're going through these, you know, depending on our phases in life and different times, but we all share the same core fears. And then we can sit with that fear and see, like, okay, how can I work with that? How can I be okay with that, knowing that fear actually tries to protect me from something, but then also knowing, like, I don't have to be controlled by that fear, because ultimately we have the control over our fears. And we can redirect it. I like to use an affirmation from that fear when my fear is like, I can't do this because I might make a mistake. Why would it be so bad to make a mistake? Because then I wouldn't be loved by others. So ultimately the fear would be, I am not unconditionally loved. I am only loved under certain conditions. So my affirmations for that would be, I am unconditionally loved. Mm-hmm. And that would be something that I tell myself until I feel it. Not just superficially, oh yeah, I'm unconditionally loved. No, telling yourself until you really, really feel it. This is where I do mirror work too, looking in yourself in the mirror and really telling that as you were a different person. And that's a way that I really integrate that shadow and transform it from a stumbling stone that would hold me back from going down that path to a stepping stone that helps me really move past my fears and do the things that I feel called to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for relaying all of that. I feel like as someone who helps people map that kind of stuff inside of themselves too, for those of you who maybe don't know, Hannah works as a inner peace coach, and she has clients that she walks through these phases and seasons of life to help them find that inner peace so that they can then achieve the goals that they want to achieve in life. And it may seem like a stretch for people that maybe haven't started doing a ton of shadow work to be like, oh, it's just about other people and them loving me. That doesn't relate, but it really is. You might be up on like the very surface, or no, up at the highest leaf of a tree of something that's, seemingly like, why is this happening to me in my life? Oh, this is so annoying. And you maybe just haven't done a lot of the work that is like, well, what would happen if this were to crumble? Or what would happen if this, that, or the other thing? And it does take a lot of time, a lot of times, and a lot of work depending on how attached we are to having that thing that we really want.
Yes, and how attached, and I love that you just mentioned that, because that takes us to the other shadow side of spirituality, is when we have too much dark. So when we are too attached to those wounds and dramas in our lives, and we actually don't want to do the shadow work, because what shadow work would do would
eradicate it.
Yeah, transform it. And so we don't really want to do that, because they're a part of our identity. That wound, that thing that happened to us, that's part of who we are now. So to feel like, oh, I'm going to transform that into a blessing, and I'm going to, change up my whole story around it, it would just make it scary for us, because we would lose a part of our identity. And so this is where we can get too attached to our own shit, and we want to keep that because it maybe is able to connect ourselves with others more, or it's able to help us feel special in some way, or
help us feel like a victim in some way, like the world is plotting against us.
Yeah. And that's another thing where we can look at if we get too soaked into the drama, and that's where light work helps. So this is like we're going into, right, we want to find a balance. So if we're too much in the darkness, we want to bring in more light. If we're too much in the light, we want to bring in more darkness. So in this case, what is light work? What would you say is light work?
I was just thinking, I wonder what she's going to say that light work is. Yeah, I think of it as just the self-healing practices that resonate with what I feel that I need to work on in that moment. Because, and this is where moon ceremony comes into as such a helpful tool for me to do that shadow work, which essentially transmutes into light work, because it's helping me heal by doing the shadow work. However, what I was going to say.
And the light work is basically what you give to others, right? Like, this is what we send out when we send out love and light. This is how we are service to others. And so we first, just like you said, we want to do the shadow work first, so that we can even do the light work authentically. Because just like we said, if we don't do the shadow work and we just try to focus on the light work, that's when we become inauthentic. That's when we do spiritual bypassing. That's when we don't want to look at our own shit, and we just project onto others.
I want to say too about light work not just being about the service and doing things outside of yourself. For me, light work in the healership sense is doing the things that you need to fill your cup. Doing the yoga, doing the meditation, doing the healthy eating, doing the things that are most resonant to you. And that's where the whole connection with your own intuition, and not just going with the flow and following what your friends are doing and seeing the Facebook group and what works for them, or being prey to the marketing that's being fed in so many avenues saying, you need our product, you don't need the negative stuff in your life, and, chasing these outside things. Whereas, for me, crystals, working with crystals and having crystal bracelets, crystal jewelry, incredible, invaluable tool. Absolutely transformative. But the whole thing about it is being intentional with what it is that you're choosing to partake in.
Yeah.
And not just doing it because, oh, well, I feel like I should, or, oh, well, having stuff like that, because you can have all the tools in the world. If you don't know how to use them or of what benefit they are going to be in your life, they're not going to be a benefit to you. And I will also say, sometimes we have tools that come into our lives that are just it's not our time to work with them yet. Mm-hmm. Sometimes years down the line passes and it's like, oh my goodness, this is the time. Yeah. Just like tarot for me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Beautiful. And this is where we come back to that intuitive self again. We can be so focused on the intellectual part of what we think we should be like or what we think we should be doing, but then the intuitive part in ourselves is actually helping us finding that inner calling and what is calling us literally, what is pulling us towards it.
Yeah, I think that whole aspect brings a really beautiful sense of dynamicism to our existence too, when we're actually so self-aware and grounded in who we are as a person and what does and does not work for us, that we are able to bring a new conversation to the table. Because a lot of times what you also find within the spiritual community is everyone just feels the same about everything. Mm-hmm. And it's like it's very group mentality, very
and they're taboo topics.
Yeah, this oneness. It's like the oneness over fixation, where when you express yourself as an individual, sometimes it can be like, well, we're all one over here. Yeah. And then you're like, oh, well, I'm one too, but I'm also me. Yeah. So there's not this separation unless you want to make a separation.
Yeah, and both are beautiful.
So what I was going to say about the whole expressing yourself, if it is against the grain and bringing that new topic to the table, is it actually liberates and empowers others when everybody is in a group mentality and you feel like you should just agree because everybody else is doing it, and you actually stand up and say, actually, you know what, that doesn't resonate for me. Or actually, you know what, I don't have very much information about that. Can you give me some? Mm-hmm. Or what is your practice with that? That's a really interesting question, because a lot of times there's not that much of a deeper practice. It's just words. Anyways.
Yeah, that's where we get to the apple again. Yeah, it can be so shiny from the outside, but then when you look deeper into it, then it's like, oh no.
Yeah. This is where a lot of people this is where, thank you for that, sorry. This is where a lot of people can look at spiritual people and be like, yeah, I don't feel like I'm missing out on any part of that, because it seems very shallow in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of ways, it is very, very shallow, unless you bring that depth that you are seeking to have, or that you notice isn't there, or that you just want to bring to the table. And you might be outcasted and you might be ostracized, and that doesn't have anything to do with the spiritual community, maybe just that particular circle.
Yeah. And that's
maybe they're not your people.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah. And also we touched on that in the episode, who is a spiritual person, because ultimately we're all spiritual.
Yeah.
We all have that part within ourselves. And so just allowing everybody in your life to be a trigger and a blessing at the same time, and seeing the beauty in it. Mm-hmm. Seeing the beauty and also seeing the ugliness, because sometimes it is ugly, and that's okay. And that actually makes life way more fun.
Yeah, do we want to talk about relationships too? Because we talked about family, which you can't change. You can't change the blood family that you were born into here with. Yes, sometimes they can be toxic and you actually do need space, but sometimes you might just be triggered by them, which is a separate avenue of work. However, friend groups and intimate partnerships are the things that we have control over. We are choosing every day the partner that we are with, the romantic relationship that we are involved in, and we also choose the friends that we surround ourselves with. I always love the saying, you are the 5 closest friends that you have in your life. Mm-hmm. That's the truth. So if you feel like you're evolving and you look around at your 5 closest friends, do you vibe with them right now? Is it maybe time to start thinking about calling in a more resonant being, a more resonant vibration.
With who you can be more authentic.
Yeah, don't get mad at your friends.
Yeah.
They're just doing them.
They're just do them.
They're just, remember when you were just like them and that's why you two got along so well?
Yeah.
Don't be mean. That is a bypass.
Yes.
Do you want to touch on some of this too?
Yeah, just allowing yourself to create authentic relationships. I think that's beautiful. I just recently had this dream, actually, that I was walking around naked in the city, and I feel like it is such a beautiful metaphor for what I feel like I'm stepping really into now, is to just really allow myself to be a trigger, and embracing that I am a trigger to other people. And embracing all of that, that I do call people out on their shit, and it's actually has been so helpful in my coaching practice and in my relationships, because it's just part of being a trigger for other people and embracing that. And I think, being naked in a public place is usually a lot of times a nightmare for people. It's like one of the typical nightmares, and I would usually feel really self-conscious, but in my dream I was so confident, and I was like, all right, I'm just doing it. That's just who I am. And this is the beauty about when you get to that authenticity part, because then you can just be who you are, and that it's okay, everything that happens around you, because you're going to figure it out.
Yeah, the pressure's off.
The pressure is off. The pressure to be some perfect being that you think you should be is off.
And even coming to realize your imperfections, to love them, and just knowing that you're never going to appeal to everybody. You're never going to.
Yeah.
So the sooner that you can accept that you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, the easier it's going to be for you to be able to really step into a place that's saying, I'm going to forge my own damn path. I'm going to create my own lane. I'm going to start acting on the gifts and talents that I feel coming through me, even though I don't see anybody else doing it. Yeah, newsflash, nobody else is going to be doing it, because it's just yours.
Yes.
In the exact way that you're going to be giving it.
Exactly. We all connected. Like, we all have similar gifts and talents. Like, we all have similar ideas. You may think, oh, that already exists, but it's not going to exist the way you do it, because that's your authentic, unique way that only you can bring to the table.
Yeah. That's why the world would only benefit if people just started forging their own paths. It's like,
if we were all authentic, we would live in peace.
Yeah, exactly.
Mostly
in peace. Mostly the medicine of mostly.
We touch more on that in the episode too. Which episode was that? Oh, the feminine and masculine episode.
Yeah.
Feminine and masculine energies. So that was it. That was our ugly side of spirituality.
Jeez. And I feel like I could just talk on this
forever.
Yeah, so many more ideas are coming. And this is something I want to touch on too. We are, Hannah and I, and all of us obviously, are constantly learning, constantly growing, constantly evolving in this life. And there have been a few times that I've listened to past episodes and heard a little misspeak. I know for myself, in the chakra episode, I was talking about the chakras and what they are, and I referred to the channel in front of the spine as the nadi, and it's actually the Sushumna. And it's important for me because there's a little piece of myself that's like, that's not right, that's not truthful, I misspoke, and I don't want anyone, thinking that that's something, because that's actually not the truth of what it is. But this brings the humanness piece to it. Just because we have a podcast doesn't mean that sometimes we're not going to misspeak And all of these topics we could talk about for many more hours. So just because we don't include something in one specific episode doesn't mean that that's like the absolute.
Yes. Yes.
And there are so many lineages and traditions of a lot of the stuff that we talk about. So we realize that there are a lot of varieties in viewpoints out there.
Yeah. And we're just embracing our own humanness.
And
that's what connects us.
exactly.
All of you.
The things that we share are the things that are closest to our hearts specifically. And that's why we're sharing them.
Yeah, thank you for that.
So what's going to be the action guide?
So the action guide is ask yourself, in what ways do you spiritually bypass? And if you think, oh my gosh, no, I would never do that, then you probably are doing it.
Right now.
What do you push away? What do you not want to acknowledge about yourself? What do you keep attracting into your life? What kind of behavior from other people do you keep attracting into your life? What kind of types of people, types of situations? Because that also shows what are you pushing away from yourself. And what do you make about others that's actually about you?
That is so good. I love that. What do you make about others that's actually about you? It can be so hard to look at ourselves sometimes because we can get so convicted by the wrongs that people do to us. How could you do that?
And then we're doing it in a different area in our lives, just the same way.
Yeah. Wow.
So fun.
Thank you so much for joining us for this jam-packed episode. I actually thought this was going to be a lot longer than what it is.
Nice.
So there you go. We really fit it in there.
Well, thank you, everybody, and thank yourself, too, for honoring this time. And I'm really excited for you to embrace your shadows and really step into your authentic self, that beautiful, authentic self of yours.
Yep. Don't be a know-it-all. Don't be a know-it-all. Just be you.
Just be you.
Just be you.
Beautiful.
You're the you-iest you that's ever existed. And it is, wow, what a blessing to be here on this planet and to share time and space with you right now. Truly. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Namaste.
Have a beautiful rest of your night, beloved. Namaste.